This week's Parsha is Parshas Va'Yigash. In Parshas Va'Yigash, Yaakov expresses his fear to go down to Egypt. Yaakov makes a decision to take his entire family and move to Egypt where Yosef is. He wanted to meet his son again. And with that started the Egyptian exile. That was the beginning, or I should say the beginning of the Egyptian exile. So Hashem comes to him in a dream and tries to quiet his fears. And God tells him two things. You are worried, Yaakov, that your children will become absorbed by the Egyptian society. First of all, L'goy gadol simcha. I will make them into a great nation. A goy is a nation. And number two, I will go down with you, meaning the divine presence will accompany the Jewish people, the children of Yaakov, to Egypt. And when they exit Egypt, when they will be redeemed, when they will be set free, I will go with them back to the land of Israel. So, what was Hashem trying to accomplish with these two statements? What exactly in these two statements is going to make Yaakov feel better? Was Yaakov worried about how many people the Jewish people would be? Was he worried about the population? Did he want them to be in the millions? Was that his main concern? He didn't care how many Jewish people there were who were his descendants. He was worried about their identities. So how by telling Yaakov, Goy Gadol, to be a great nation? And so what? If they're absorbed by the Egyptian culture and they move back to the land of Israel, just a bunch of Egyptians living in God's land. And number two, he tells him that I'm going to go with you. Very nice. But what does that do? What does that give? What advantage does that give the Jewish people? To this, the Ar Chaim and others explain that the purpose of exile, at least the Egyptian exile, was for the Jewish people to unearth sparks. And there are obviously mystical ways to understand this, but I think there's a very simple way of understanding it. When a person is amongst people who he knows, people who he has been friendly with and has social connections with for a long time, his comfort level is very high, and he only associates himself, he only interacts with people of that kind, then what eventually happens is that he doesn't see the similarities. He doesn't see the distinctiveness of their group. Let's flip it. Let's say the opposite. A person was in that type of ghetto living, and then he moves to a different place where everybody is different than him. And there's just a few people there who are like him. In that environment, his distinctiveness and the distinctiveness of his group, their qualities, their differences, their advantages, their detriments, are become much clearer, and that group, despite the fact that they're put within another group, are now even stronger. Their unity of purpose, and their self-identifying with that purpose is so much stronger. And that's exactly what occurred in Egypt. In Egypt, what happened was Hashem put them in the most immoral, vile society on planet Earth at that time. Why? Because they would have no choice but not to be absorbed by the society. They would have to recognize the common feature of being a Jew. They would realize the distinctiveness of their national character. It would build that identity. It would create a Jewish identity much stronger than it was in the land of Israel, where they basically lived ghetto style. They didn't live amongst the non-Jews. They lived separately. And that is what exile does. It creates a distinctive identity. Of course, exile does other things also, but the purpose of exile is that it creates a Jewish identity, a stronger Jewish identity, optimally. That's best case scenario exile. So that's why Hashem tells him first, you will be a great nation. Goy does not only mean, the Hebrew word goy does not only mean nation, it also means distinctive nation. It's a national identity. Like we say there's 70 nations, goyim, because each nation is a separate category because of their distinctive features. And then he tells them that I'm going to go down with you, meaning that even in Egypt, there's going to be a spiritual advantage despite the fact that they'll be inside a society full of immorality. Quick question on this week's Parsha. Yaakov then meets his son Yosef for the first time after 22 years, his prized son Yosef. And as his son locks him in his embrace, Yaakov does what? He says Shema. Why at this extremely inappropriate time does Yaakov decide it's time to say Shema? I'm assuming that he already davened. This is the point in time when he sees his son for the first time in 22 years. Now is the time to say Shema. Why? Have a good Shabbos.